Alrighty, so in week 4 in CIT 93, we're going to do a code challenge for our attendance, okay? So, but before we get into that, I want to talk about kind of where we're at here at week 4, because we're going to do, of course, our 4.1 and 4.2. We're going to learn about how to calculate points, doing more modules, and then displaying. So these are way important things to know how to do. But what I want to do is look forward to week 5. So in week 5, we're going to do local storage so that our data is actually saved, because what you'll notice is once we start displaying content, it will go away when the page is refreshed. But in week 5 is also our first step for doing your decision app. So part of your course grade comes from creating an app, and this app will be based on the design patterns you've seen in this course, and of course your own idea of a decision that you make in your life in a regular basis. And you'll hear me talk more about this. But next week, what you'll have is, of course, just step 1. So what we'll have is several steps through the semester, and I try to space them about from step 2, I think there's 3 weeks until the next one, maybe 2 or 3. But what this gives us a chance to do is give you, instead of another 5.2, this would be the work you would do. Now, the other thing we're doing, and just to give you that heads up, is that this week I'm giving you this code challenge as a way to help you start thinking about the technical interview. Because in a technical interview, somebody's assessing how well you know something. And what we've done so far in this class is you've coded along with me. Hopefully, most of you seem to have figured out how to check your code in DevTools and either go back and watch me fix it, or go back and watch how I wrote it to see how you needed to fix it, or you fixed it on your own, okay? Now, what's really important about this is first, just because finding errors sometimes means you're just needing to understand that code and what that syntax looks like, right? That's often what it is, but there's also just another exposure you have to the code. So, but when you get to a technical interview, I could ask you to do something, to code something, and had you not had a challenge before to do that, that's what these are intended to help you with. Okay, but in this week, I'm actually going to give you a process to walk through, okay, to help you gauge how well these skills and knowledge are being translated. So before we jump into that, I just want to give a few course topics, right? So a couple of things I just want to give you the heads up on is that, and most of you have seen me do this, but if you haven't, I will place comments on your grade submission or your submissions, whether it be for the checkpoints or whether it be for your actual code along and attendance as well. And the thing about those is the thing you've heard me talk about from the beginning is like work ahead. Understanding when to submit that for my review is important. So if something is due, Monday night, I would need to see it by Monday morning because my schedule is set up to do grading first thing in the morning. That's just the way my schedule is. It's the way I've created it because it's what works for me. So then in the afternoon, I have campus related stuff or I have content like I'm doing today. I'm doing content. But the point is to understand how to get that review in order to submit. Now, the other thing is because I leave those comments, what you want to do is make sure you see them. And then if for some reason you reply with the response that you would have expected me to reply to and I don't, that just means you got buried based on the avalanche that comes in when due dates are. So you can always reach out to me directly on Canvas, and I say this here, in the inbox, right? That's the best way to get in touch with me. As I've said before, Discord is really intended to be student to student. Brianna our tutor will often reply if she's available, or I will if I'm available, but the idea is for you to connect with each other. But I just wanted to give you that kind of understand. And because the thing is, you really do want to reach out for help. 5 minutes talking to somebody that's looking at your code or you're trying to understand can save you a lot of time. So, utilize the resources that you have. Okay, so let's move in to week 4, attendance post. And in week 4, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you attempt to code through a series of steps a instant greeting generator. Okay, I had a whole thinking about what I wanted to do here, and I wanted to have something that but takes the concepts that we've learned, right, and implement them in a way that's not the carbon footprint, or in a way that's not me telling you how to code it. Again, it's the idea of you taking what you've learned and see how well you're translating. And you do not feel bad if you don't get this the first round, because the idea is actually to say then, okay, what do I do next? Okay, so let's first talk about what it is you're going to create. So here's your task, right? So your task, and here's the requirements, I would say, for what this is like a client walking up to you and saying, hey, this is what I want. And so in this case, you're going to do this work in your public repo, right? So your pub. And what in there, you'll create a W4. Now I'm just going to move over to mine, because here's the deal, right? I have just opened my public repo in my VS Code, right? And I've created that W4, so it's at the same level as my W1, and I've used here just an index and a app.js. So in this case, we're not doing modules. By the way, you totally could here. You could totally do a form handling module, but you don't have to, right? Because the idea is that we're just now getting more into modules. So let's focus on some of these core concepts. So in the HTML, you'll create a heading 1 that says something like, I think I created, here's my output, right? Instant greeting generator. Notice there's no CSS here, because I really want to focus just on the HTML, not HTML, but yes, but the JavaScript itself. Okay, so if you want to add CSS, wait until the last step to do that. Okay, so I have a form element in this case, right? We want to give that a unique ID. Inside the form, you want to input text, right? So this is what this looks like, and I added a label because I like labels. You probably want to label that. Notice I have a placeholder here, okay? And then a button, right? So I have a button that says submit here. So even though this is just one input, it's still wrapped in a form, and that's what you need to do. Okay, and then the submit. So then an empty element, right, outside of the form. So if I was to look, it's actually down here for me. I have an empty, and I think I did an H2. We'll see it in a minute. Okay, and then in that case, give that empty outside of the form, whatever you use, H2P div, you can use whatever, right, and display the final greeting message and make sure it's a unique ID, okay, because that's how we've been referencing the DOM. In your JS file, link it to your index.html. Remember, we're doing DOM elements, so there's a couple ways we've learned in this course. I'll just give you a little hint, defer and listening for DOM loaded, okay? So link to your index.html up in the head section, write code that listens for the event on the form, okay? So in this case, what are we listening for? We're listening for a click. And the event handler you have to use prevent default, else it won't work the way you want. And that stops it from reloading the page, right? So if you ever have that, when you hit submit and it just looks like it does nothing, it's probably just reloading the page. So now here's what the output needs to be. So after preventing the default, your code should read the value of whatever's in the input field, create a new greeting with a string, and in this case a template string. Actually, I need to change this. This should be a template string, because we've learned how to inject using template strings variables. So I'm glad I saw that. I need to modify it. And then display the new string out inside your output element, right? And then reset the form input. So if you were to have this working, so I could put my name, right? I can hit submit, and so it's real. Make sure, and I use a little emoticon, do something fun today. Actually, this is fun for me, so I've been successful. Now notice what happened, and it worked by really quickly. But the input, right? If I just even do R, it works, right? But the input gets reset. Now, it's basic requirements of what you need it to do, all right? So now, let's just talk about what you do what's the flow here. So now, how to approach this from a developer standpoint. The goal of this challenge is not to build is not just to build the project, but to practice on how to solve problems like a developer. Please follow, well, you have to follow these steps and make a git commit after each one. So the first one is the focus mode. So in this case, set a timer, right? I mean, I say 20 minutes, so I think 20 minutes is, what you want to do is give this an honest effort, because here's the deal, and I say this is where the real learning happens. You really get a lot from this step, even if you don't get code, and actually especially sometimes, but at least what you've done here is you've given yourself the time to actually think about how you would accomplish what the customer, in this case me, is asking for. So here's what I suggest is in your app.js is write 2 to 3 sentences. We call this pseudocode, just about what you need your code to do. And I actually gave you even an example to help you further, see an example of what pseudocode would look like. So get the form from the HTML, listen for the element when submitted, prevent the page load, right? And then add more, right? So I've only given you part of it. So in this case, write your understanding of what you need to do. Again, this is really helpful. And then test in pieces, like see if your form submission's working, see if you can access the input, right? Do you see page reload? Did you include prevent default? Okay, and then read the errors. This is vitally important. I've been harping this, but I can just tell you that this is such an important part of the process, because there will most likely be errors, and very few people I know will write code. Actually, nobody I know does this. Everybody gets errors. It's just a matter of understanding them. And here's the deal: don't panic. It really is just a clue, right? Read it carefully. What is it telling you? But again, this is focus mode. This is just to see how well you can translate the requirements by writing code for what we've done. Don't look at anything. Don't look at our previous work. Don't look at, don't ask a friend yet. Don't look at AI for sure. AI is in this list. I'm just telling you, there's a process, right? So at the end of this, right, your focus work, your focus time, your zone, commit with whatever you have. Use the message that looks like this, okay? And now it doesn't have to be exactly like this, because you may have something different. And this is like, this commit message is like feature, initial attempt, right? You could use this if you got working code here, right? By the way, I did get working code in this part. It honestly took me a little longer than I expected. I got hung up on a couple of things, and it was really good for me. I don't ask you to do something I haven't done myself. And I can just tell you, it was a good experience for me, and I hope it is for you. But the idea is not to feel bad about whatever comes out of this stage. Give it a, oh, here's where I'm at. Okay, now, do your commit, right? Now, by the way, do your commit. As long as your commit's there, you don't have to push it. You can totally push. You could go look at it. Remember that the way we look at the stuff out on the public repos, and you'll see this in a minute, is going to be at a URL that renders the website, right? So now I'm not going to push my code, right? But it will be, I'm looking at it locally, so this would not be the URL. And you can look back at week 1 to see what that is, like what that example is, but I'll show you in a minute. Okay, as far as the syntax. So now, ask a friend or code review, or review code you've written in this course, right? So don't go beyond that. So ask a classmate or a review, or actually I should say here, a tutor, right? So definitely you could ask Brianna about this. Zach is also available as our course tutor if you get stuck, okay? Now, right now, so 20 minutes up or whatever you took, right? You could even say that in your comments, right? So look back at the code from previous code along assignments, right? The solution to your problem is likely in the code we've already written. This is a common practice for developers, right? It's not to say you shouldn't, but here's the deal. If you only look at code that's written versus understanding how to write it from the beginning, you don't benefit from that type of skill development, okay? Now, the other thing you can do here is you could ask a question. And now you could ask a question on Discord, you could ask a question in the discussion, right? And now part of this is also more students are obviously interacting as they get closer to the due date. This is a reason to be ahead, because you're more likely to get it. And if I see it, I will try to help as well. And you can come see me as well. Now, your submission requirements, if you get help, right, then in your app.js, just say how you got help. Where, in this case, an example, discuss with Sarah, who reminded me the event listener goes in the form, not on the button, right? Or I reviewed code along 3.1 to remember how to write the event listener. I think that's in 3, yeah, pretty sure. Now, whichever way you do that, I want some comments in there, and then there should be a next evolution of your code here. You could still not have working code. Really, it's okay, okay? You got to learn, I would suggest to you to learn to be okay with not knowing. Not knowing is an okay place. Not trying, is not where you want to be. All right, so now commit with, and here's some examples, right? I updated the code after peer review or peer collaboration, right? Or I reviewed this, so be specific in your commit messages for what you actually did here. Now, step 3. So if you get all the way here and you're still looking for something, now by the way, you may have gotten working code anywhere before this, and you could be using this step to add something to your output. That would be fine, okay? Now, and in this case, you might think, well, I'll add CSS. So I would resist that temptation because this is really about writing code, okay? So now here's my guidelines for using AI, right? You're still unable to get working code. Use it as a debugging partner. Ask for help, not answers. Give AI your code and the problem you're seeing and ask it to find the bug or explain the concept. Okay, don't ask it, right? Here's the bad, right? Write the code for the form that doesn't load. That's not. But while my page is still reloading, why is my page reloading? So these examples are harping upon the event default, but you definitely could have stuff like I'm not reading the input value correctly. All right, so here's your final commit on this one, right? So if you ended up adding a feature, you could say that, right? You still refactored, for your final version. You definitely could have, and by the way, this is true. You could have multiple commit messages along here. I'm just giving you examples, and actually multiple commits show your thinking. Like when I look at yours, I will look at how was your thinking process through here. All right, so here's your checklist. Right? So what you will end up doing in the reply is you'll give us your URL to your GitHub IO. So remember, we did this in week 1, right? So this is unlike your submitting your commit history. I don't worry about giving a commit history because that's what I will look at. And actually that's what you're, when you review each other's work, you could also look at, okay? So you want to give us a link to whatever that is, right? So remember, here is your repo, whatever you named your repo. But remember also that when you push code to here, sometimes it can take a minute for it to show up. So don't freak out. Come back maybe after a cup of coffee or whatever you're doing. Now, you need a working HTML in week 4. You need a working and linked JS, and you have to have working code, right? So you have to have working code in here. Comment, right? So here's how I grade, right? So a comment for the collaboration of the AI and other required output from above. Okay, so I want to see comments and commits that document your process. So here's how I grade is each commit message and comment in the code, correct link that opens into your grading page, general comments. Now, in this case, general comments means in the discussion about the challenge. There's 20 points for that. Working code, there's where this is at, 30 points. This is, by the way, also aligned with our code along. And in this case, you're going to also now you're going to review somebody else's code. Now, don't do this until you're done with the process. Don't bypass the process. And if you find yourself bypassing the process, let me just bring myself back here for a minute. If you do that, let me just tell you, I get it, right? So it's like there's an uncomfortableness in not knowing and just wanting to get to the answer. There's like, I'm in a time crunch and I just need to do this. I get that too. But I'm just trying to give you an experience that helps you prep for a technical interview and really just helps you see how well your skills are developing. Okay, so 20 points comes from replying to a classmate. And in this case, what you're going to do is look at their code and either ask a question or make a comment about their code, right? Or their output or something. And really, and let me say this, if you make a comment about their output, it has to be reflected about the code that they use. Because the idea is, like anything, the more you expose your consciousness, or you allow yourself to, in this case, read code. Generally, the better you write code. This is the same with writing in general, right? Okay, so that's your assignment. So when you hit reply, you'll give us your URL. Do make sure, right? This is good to go over whenever, and again, make sure you've put that in the week 4. That's part of what I will look for as well. Again, keep in mind the goal here, right? The goal is actually to work through a process that allows you to see where your skill, how well you are developing, and how quickly you can learn given the task at hand. Let me say it that way. I don't know if that's the best way to say it. Anyway, week 4, time for me to go finish the code along and do the, let me say a word here about, actually, I think I'll wait and say this. I'll do a video for the checkpoints because there's a couple things I want to talk about there. All right, thanks so much. See you later.